Rhonda? All right, Elder Rhonda does not have a point. Well, with that, the House will continue the speeches following the Delegate of Netherlands. Delegate of Netherlands, you have the floor for 90 seconds. You may begin.
The Delegate of Netherlands is honored to share her speech. Child labor is an ongoing problem worldwide, affecting 152 million victims in early 2020, where 52% of the children are aged 12 to 17 and 48% is aged 5 to 11. Most of these children work in agriculture, industry, and services. Child labor is typically caused by financial difficulties, for instance, poverty and unemployment. There has been no record of recent cases of child labor in the Netherlands, not since 1874, when the Dutch government introduced a law prohibiting children below the age of 12 from employment. However, the government is concerned about child labor cases in today's globalization era, specifically the goods and services coming into the Netherlands. Both voluntary and government attempts have been made. For example, Agreement on Sustainable Garment and Textile, also known as AGT. Under AGT, companies and organizations come together and commit to help achieve decent employment, free of child and forced labor. In 2019, the Child Labor Due Diligence Law was adopted by the Dutch Senate. This law mandates all companies and organizations to inspect their supply chains and prohibit suppliers from manufacturing their materials by child labor. Nevertheless, the due diligence law is not expected to come into effect prior to 2022. For now, the government will allow companies to re-examine their suppliers in case child labor was involved in the process. These stories are inspiring and should be publicized to raise awareness about child labor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate, for that speech. Next, the House will call on the Delegate of Thailand. Delegate of Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you for recognizing me. Well, the delegate of Thailand is one of the countries with the worst forms of child labor in garment industry. The country has made efforts to combat the issue at hand. For example, it has established policies that are consistent with relevant international standards on child labor. Some policies include legal framework which ensure that the law criminally prohibits the recruitment of children under age 18 by non-state aimed groups, and also social programs aimed at improving access to education and school and transportation. The delegate of Thailand proposes that the committee implements mandatory awareness programs in all member states and a minimum of 50 years life imprisonment. The delegate of Thailand is trying by all means to find ways in which they can combat the issue, or in which they can eliminate child labor in the country. And so, as you can see, the trend is decreasing as the years are increasing. That means they're trying to set up policies that is going to help the country. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. We will now start with the delegate of Gabon. Delegate, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds of speaking time. Delegate, are you ready?
Yes.
Delegate, your time starts now.
Quoting Malala Yousafzai, we realize the importance of our voice when we are silenced. This is how many young children feel when they've been forced into child labor. They're not able to use their voice, so it is our responsibility to speak up for them. Greetings, fellow delegates and chairs. Thank you for the recognition. What does childhood mean to you? Learning, exploring, playing, having fun? For 160 million girls and boys around the world, childhood has a different meaning. It is filled with many hours of daily, often hazardous work. Their rights to safe childhoods and education are compromised. Francois is one of the many children trapped in child labor. He is 14 years old. He said, I used to go to school, but now I work to get enough money to eat. These are the conditions people are facing around the world. 11% of all children around the world are forced or willingly entered the chain of child labor. 11% converted to numbers is 160 million children around the world. 100 million children around the world are affected in the garment industry or footwear chain. This figure accounts for 70% of the children affected by child labor. 500 children are farm workers in the United States, 10.1 million children working in India, 4.7 million in Bangladesh, and 1.3 million in
Is Delegate of Venezuela. Chair Keisha, could you please cue Delegate of Venezuela?
No, it's delegate of Bangladesh's turn.
Chair, there's someone in the chat messaging. Please add me.
Delegate of Bangladesh, have you had your speech?
Yes, I just had my speech right before this.
Chair Keisha,
My
I believe
bad.
it's yours.
Apologies.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate of Bangladesh. Thank you, Chair Keisha. Delegate of Venezuela, you have 90 seconds. Are you ready?
Yes.
Delegate, the floor is now yours. Your time begins now.
Overlooks formal education. Thus, employment possessed an attractive solution for survival. About 5.6 million Venezuelans have fled the country since the economic collapse in 2014, representing the largest human displacement in Latin American history. This vulnerable exodus of refugees includes a large number of children, many of whom are begging on the streets with their parents in host countries. Between begging and taking up employment, refugee children and parents are faced with little choice but to meet the demand for child labor. As there is no available data, we can only assume that some of the child labor figures in the garment and textile industries of host countries such as Colombia and Peru also include Venezuelan refugee children. The Venezuelan government is very grateful to our neighbors and friends who have welcomed our citizens. However, it could well be the case that these child refugees may have jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. If host countries do not ensure these innocents are provided for and so remove their motivation to seek employment and fuel the supply of child labor. Solutions. To resolve child labor, not only the demand but also the supply of children for child labor must be interrupted. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Pretty concise speech. Next, we have the Delegate of Pakistan. Delegate of Pakistan, are you ready? Are you ready, Delegate?
Thank
Delegate,
you.
the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, for the recognition. Fellow delegates, 30% of children in Togo, those aged 5 to 14, have been or is in child labor. In 2015, 55.1% of the Togolese people, including children, has lived below the poverty line. And throughout 2017, 25% of the Togolese girls were married as minors. In 2019, there were efforts to increase labor monitoring. Last year, our government prohibited perilous work for children who are minors. The measures that Togo took on child labor have shown to be effective. Labor inspectors are able to collect more information through their investigations, which can help improve safety. Prohibiting perilous work for children below 18 can secure the comfort that there will be less harmful child labor. To curtail child labor in the garment industry will require commitment to ensuring labor monitoring takes place. Thank you. I yield my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate.
Crime has actually decreased in the Maldives during the pandemic. The most common crimes in the archipelago during the pandemic have been first, drug use and drug dealing, second, vandalism and theft, third, corruption and bribery, and fourth, assault and armed robbery. Fortunately, with the lingering pandemic, there had been a suspension of flights and restriction of travels which helped obstruct the narcotics networks operating in the country, which decreased the Maldives' number one problem, drug-related crime. Along with government-imposed lockdowns, the Maldives Police Service began joint efforts with relevant authorities to counter the social issues that may arise, such as domestic violence and social problems due to drug addicts being unable to secure drugs during this period. Two measures have been notable in decreasing crime. Firstly, the public was urged to immediately contact the police through established online portals if any crimes had been identified. Secondly, the Maldives Police Service has been more active on the streets, which is likely the main reason behind a reduced crime rate. This delegate believes that a key solution to crime in these uncertain times is to bolster police presence, which will require expansion of the police force, thus creating more public sector jobs. This will not only improve security but support families facing poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Mobius. Next, we will recognize the delegate of Ethiopia.
Does not provide solutions for local crime, focusing instead on increasing border surveillance. In the case of Nepal, theft became a serious crime in recent months, and because police presence has proven to considerably reduce crime during lockdowns, and as the delegate of Maldives mentioned, expansion of the police force will be significant in the immediate future to curb crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate of Nepal. Delegate of Sweden is recognized next.
Delegate of Fiji, you may now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. So, fellow delegates, the digital divide has caused several gender inequality problems, such as the decrease of mobility and development for women online, which has caused them to have less participation in various areas and sectors, including political, socio-cultural development, and individual rights. In Fiji, the issue of gender inequality as caused by the digital divide is very severe. The lack of digital resources for women, especially in secluded islands, has held back women's rights in political, social, and economic aspects. The digital gender divide has taken its toll on various areas of life, but especially in girls' education in secluded islands, causing them to be unable to study and research useful information. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when online access has been a lifeline for many, such as enabling work or study from home or access to vital health information, the lack of digital access and helplessness resulting from the digital divide has especially affected girls and women. Like many Pacific nations, Fijian women generally face gender bullying and discrimination in the workplace, have a low ratio of women in ICT, and have little incentive to work in ICT due to prevailing perceptions that ICT is a male-dominated domain. There are regional initiatives to address the digital gender divide, such as Pacific Women for ICT and the ICT4W. However, Fiji's requirement to resolve the digital gender divide involves addressing the nation's deep-seated gender discrimination and lack of female representation in the outdated political system that prefers men over women. The Fijian government is gradually changing outdated laws and replacing them with new policies that allow more access to women generally, and this includes access to the internet. Nevertheless,
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, next to speak is the delegate of USA. Delegate, you may now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The delegate of USA would like to speak on toxic feminism and its rising popularity over actual feminism. In today's world, the real threat to feminism and healthy empowerment of women is not the aristocratic masculine men who demand power over females. Of course, they're still a threat, but the real contender is the feminists themselves. Or moreover, the toxic part of the community, whose collective efforts not only push people away from the real cause, it radicalizes the public against the actual women empowerment. Most toxic feminists may have a good intention behind their actions, but most of the time it's always misguided to all men are bad. There is no fixed solution that can be suggested to this, but the least the public can do is manage to do is educate them, give them the emotional support required in directing their passion towards the right cause. Thank you, Chair, for giving me.
Good morning, Chair and fellow delegates. Despite the ongoing debates about the ethics of legalizing abortion, one thing's for sure, if abortion were to be legalized, the number of women dying from unsafe abortion, suicide, as well as other issues such as infertility and mental, economics, and social problems resulting from unwanted pregnancy will undeniably decrease. In 2015, Chile took its first step to legalize abortion when it won a vote which became law in 2017. The law legalized abortion in case in which a woman's life was in danger, when a fetus was unviable, or when the pregnancy resulted from rape. This, however, accounted for only 3% of clandestine abortion in the country. Less than 2 weeks ago, Chile approved a plan to debate a bill to legalize abortion up to 14 weeks of pregnancy. However, this process will take time before it becomes a law. For Chilean women, this represents greater reproductive rights and access to health care that could save their life and significantly reduce rates of maternal mortality in the country. In a region that is very religious and conservative, abortion is considered murder of innocent children. But Chile believes that it is also murder to deprive women of the rights to access safe abortion and reproductive health care. We believe it is responsibility for the government to provide these to their female citizens and to leave the moral decision to the individual without judgment. Thank you.